7:04 p.m. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Liebers. Here. Carmen. Here. Ho. Here. Casey.
Here.
Campos.
Present.
Ms. Ballard.
Here.
Keon.
Here.
Bell.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Anderson. Abekoga.
Here.
And Duong. Thank you.
We'll move to reports from the chairs. There is no governing board chair as of right now, so no report. Chair Carmen, do you have anything to report?
No reports.
Do we have any report from the Public Advisory Committee?
Good afternoon. I am Reed Lerner. I am the chair of the Public Advisory Committee. The Public Advisory Committee has 9 members, 2 from the business and development community, which is what I represent, 2 from the environmental community, 2 from farming and ranching community, and 3 from the general public. I see on today's agenda for the governing board that there are 2 new appointees to the committee that are up for consideration. The committee last met on November 7th of 2024. We had 2 important items on the agenda. One was a report on the update and technical committee work for updating the habitat plan. And the other item was an interesting description on how they are cleaning up and restoring ponds so that birds and amphibians can live there. The next meeting of the Public Advisory Committee is February 6, 2025. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Reed. We will now open public comment for items not on the agenda. Kim, are there any members of the public with us that wish to speak on items not on the agenda?
I have no speakers.
I will go ahead and close public comment. We will move on to the Joint Governing and Implementation Board agenda, starting with the consent calendar. There is one item on the consent calendar. Approve the minutes of the September 19th, 2024 regular joint meeting of the Governing and Implementation Board. Do any board members wish to pull this item? Do any members of the public wish to pull this item?
No. No.
Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
We have to do by roll call. Liebers. Aye. Carmen. Aye. Ho. Casey.
Aye.
Campos.
Yes.
Ballard.
Abstain.
Keon.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Marks.
Yes.
And Abekoga.
Abstain? I wasn't there.
Did you abstain? I'm sorry, I missed
Yes,
that.
I'm sorry. I was not at present, so I will abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will move on to regular business. Final report fiscal year 2023 to 2024 revenue and budget expenditures.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Marks. I have a brief presentation. Also want to welcome all the new board members. It's exciting to have a new crop of people coming in. Sad to see others leaving. We are going to have a training to onboard the new board members on what the habitat plan is and why it exists and and how your role in it is so important. And it's also open to the old board members too. That'll be sometime in March, date to be determined. You know, we'll send out like a Google invite or doodle poll or something to you all to see what date works best. So just let me switch mics. Thank you. So So this is the fiscal year 24 final operating budget review. And this will give you an overview of so for the members of the two boards that are new, we do a 2-year budget. And this was the final year, or this year is the final year of that 2-year budget cycle. So in the fiscal year 24, we projected that total revenues would be 39.6 million. Actually, they were 48.4 million, which is good news. And most of that was being driven, as you can see, by grants. And a lot of those grants were used for land acquisition. Fee revenues were not as robust as we had hoped. We thought they'd be in the $6 million range, and they were just shy of 3.5 million. Fortunately, this year is, from a fee standpoint, is proving to be stronger, and I'll talk about that in the EO report. This is the same information just shown in pie chart format. And you can see in the green, that is the grant revenue. So it was significant. And those grants came from numerous sources, NGOs like Post and Wildlife Conservation Network and the Moore Foundation, as well as county parks, Valley Water, and state and federal government. These were the expenditures. So we projected that we would be spending around 10.2 million over the year. We actually spent just a little bit over 8 million. So 2 million less than we originally thought. And some of that was due to, we used less of our money to acquire some of the properties in the past fiscal year that we acquired. And also to some different projects taking a little longer to move to completion. And they will be completed this year, or they have just been completed, actually. And again, showing you in the chart, and where we spend most of our money, which is where we're supposed to be spending it, is on conservation strategy implementation. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Hearing none, I will now open public comment. Any members from the public that would like to speak?
I have no speakers.
All right, I will now go ahead and close public comment. Now we will have, Mr. Sullivan, do you have another report as executive officer?
I do.
Okay. I will let you begin.
Thank you. And again, for the new members here today, I'll just give you a little overview of what's going on, because we don't meet that frequently, especially compared to a lot of the organizations that you represent, like cities and counties. We meet every other month, typically. Sometimes, usually the meeting in July is canceled because there's a lot of recesses with the local governments, but we keep it there just in case we have an action item that we need you all to act on, like a land acquisition. So I'm going to give you an up-to-date first on where we are with the financial overview as of yesterday. So we have money invested with the Treasury, State Treasury, Local Agency Investment Fund, also called LAIF. Some of you may have some of your municipal funds invested in this. And we have $9.8 million, over $9.8 million in that account. We also have to fund an endowment for when we're done permitting projects and we've completed all the requirements of the permit from a conservation standpoint. There's an endowment that's invested with Sand Hill Global Partners. And that endowment, when the permit is sunsetted in 50 years and the agency transitions into something else, it is supposed to fund the management, the in perpetuity management of the 47,000 acres that we're required to acquire, say that 5 times fast. And the endowment as of the 15th was at just a little over 8 million. We also have a liquidity account, some monies and some very low risk investments also with Sand Hill. And currently that stands at just under 3.3 million. So the total monies we have in our investment accounts are slightly over 21 million. We also have a bank account, like most of you all do, a government through JP Morgan Chase and their government side of their operation. And that account currently is just a little over 1 million. So that's just to handle the day-to-day stuff. So if you look at all our investment accounts and banking accounts, we have 22,100,000. So revenues today, you know how I talked about how fees weren't so great last year. This year, they're good. They're just under 6.1 million as of the second quarter. And so we still have 2 quarters left. We had projected that revenues from fees would be in the 5.5 million range, thereabouts. So we're ahead of what we projected. And it's always a kind of a look in the tea leaves or a crystal ball to try to figure out, okay, we're trying to figure out when development projects are going to pay fees, when public works projects are going to come in and pay fees. And we tried early on in the process to have accurate projections, and we were always wrong because projects would be delayed either to some hiccup with permits or financing, or so some projects we thought were going to happen last fiscal year actually paid their fees this fiscal year. We also acquired a property in the Pacheco Pass area, 1,100 acre O'Connell Ranch property, we call it, near Casa de Fruta. And we also inherited a house when we bought that property. Well, we recently sold that house for just under 1.2 million. And after fees and some other stuff, we cleared 1,129,000. So that was a good thing. And we'll use that money for land management activities. So on those investment accounts I talked about earlier, we have so far to date, we have 463,000 in interest that's been earned on those various investment accounts, interest and dividends and that sort of stuff. We also have program income, and that's from leases and other things. And we were just a little over 500,000 there, 529,000. So revenues to date are just under 8.3 million, and we thought overall revenues would be around 8.9 million for the year. So we're looking really good. And with the acquisition of the rest of Richmond Ranch, and that's being 100% funded by grants, our revenue picture will even look better with that grant income coming in. Expenses. It was projected that the adopted budget was around 8 million we'd be spending. To date, we've only spent 2.6 million, but things usually heat up in the spring, so that'll increase. So we have a remaining budget of 5.4 million that's unspent. And again, the big area where we did most of the spending was in the conservation strategy implementation of just over 1.8 million. So advocacy is part of my job, and we lobby and advocate for things that benefit the Natural Communities Conservation Plan. That's the state side of what we do. And we work with a California coalition. So we advocated for more funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board, and try to limit the cuts that happened in the budget last year. Good news is, from what I understand, there's a small surplus with this year's state budget. I don't know how the fires in LA are going to affect that, but as of now, there hasn't been any more cuts that we're aware of being proposed for next year's budget for the Department of Fish and Wildlife or Wildlife Conservation Board. We also promoted the benefits of NCCPs with some of our state electeds and the importance of this to the state's 30 by 30 biodiversity goals. We also advocated for a carve-out specifically for NCCPs within the climate bond, Prop 4, which recently passed, and will help fund a lot of the work we do. We weren't successful in that, but we gave it the college try. From a federal standpoint, things are going to be different than they were with the Biden administration. Going to Washington in early February, and I go every year with national HCP goals, so folks from Texas and Florida and other parts of California, and sometimes we get somebody from other states that is involved. And the focus of the trip is advocating for increased funding for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Section 6 grant program, which helps with planning. So with the plan amendment, we got funding to help fund that, land acquisitions, scientific experiments. So some important stuff. Regulatory streamlining, how can we get the Clean Water Act and the ESA kind of more in sync to make permitting easier for project proponents, and promoting the benefits of HCPs to our delegation. So I meet typically with the staff of the delegation. Sometimes I do meet with one of the members, and also the Senate staff, legislative committees, and administration officials. So just give you any questions. Grant updates, we were awarded two State Department of Fish and Wildlife local assistant grants totaling $183,000 to help with some scientific work we're doing with determining if this rare flower, the Tiburon paintbrush that we found on Richmond Ranch, is in fact Tiburon paintbrush. I mean, it looks like it, it walks like it, so we think it's a duck, but we got to just genetically prove that it is. And also the grant will help fund some strategies about propagation and increasing the population of that plant. There's only 7 occurrences of that plant in the entire world, and we just found another one, we think. So the State Wildlife Conservation Board is posed to approve our $4 million Richmond Ranch grant request at their February 26th board meeting. These funds would go towards purchasing the remaining 1,200 acres of the ranch that is still owned by the Conservation Fund, which kind of came in and was able to move quicker than us or the county to buy it. And this is the last remaining piece. The first 945 acres we bought from them in January, I think it was, soon after they acquired it, or February, something like that, of last year. The county purchased 1,400 acres in April, and this is the remaining 1,200 that we're acquiring. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission awarded us a $1 million priority conservation area grant for Richmond, and that will also go towards the acquisition. We were also awarded last year a grant from the Coastal Commission for $1.5 million for the same property. So working collaboratively with Valley Water, County Parks, and getting these grants from the state and MTC just showed how, all of us working together, we really pull off something. We also submitted a grant to the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal. They have this program through the Central Valley Project. We just under $1 million to help with enhancing over 500 acres of serpentine grassland, restore 6 stock ponds, and install over 9 miles of fencing to facilitate the recovery of covered plants and wildlife out at Richmond Ranch. Don't know if we'll get that grant or we'll get exactly what we asked for, but we did submit a application. I mentioned the training earlier, sometime in March, and board chair selections will be made in March. Some of our member organizations still need to choose who's going to be on the board. So we're going to do the selections in March, when hopefully everybody's here to weigh in on that. So thank you.
All right, are there any comments or questions from the board? I will,
Have one, excuse me.
sure.
I'm just curious, who writes the grants? Do you, your department, you yourself, or do you contract that out?
I don't anymore. I used to in the past, but yes, some of my staff write them. And in the past, we've used some consultants to help. But now that we've staffed up more, Matt Fogarty's been writing a lot of our grants and he's done a great job bringing in the funding. So,
Thank you.
yep, yes, you're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
On that note, how big is the staff now?
I think FTEs now is probably around 9. So, yep.
Anyone else? All right, then I will open public comment. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speakers.
All right, I will now close public comment. There's no action needed on this item. It's just, we just received a verbal report. Thank you. We will move on to the governing board agenda and consent calendar. There are 3 items on the consent calendar. Resolution honoring Rebecca Armandaris, resolution honoring Joe Simidian, AB 1600 Development Impact Fee Report fiscal year 2023-24. Do any board members wish to pull this item? Do any members of the public wish to pull this item? Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Liebers,
Aye.
Casey,
Aye.
Campos,
Yes.
Marks,
Yes.
and Abe Koga.
Aye.
Okay. At this time, do any board members have any future initiated agenda items? Hearing none, we will move on. I will now adjourn the governing board meeting and we will move on to the implementation board. Chair Carmen will take over.
Thank you. So we have 5 items on the consent agenda. We don't have any other items of business. Of those items, we have approval of minutes from November 21st of 2024, a professional services agreement with Helix Environmental Planning, Pajaro River Yagas Creek Confluence Restoration Project Agreement with ICF Triangle Properties Team, and 2 appointments to the Public Advisory Committee. Would anyone like to hear of any of those items or pull any item? Okay. Is there any member of the public that has a request to pull an item? Nope.
Nope.
All right, then I'd like a motion.
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Carmen,
Aye.
Ho, yes. Campos,
Aye.
Ballard,
Did she say my name?
yes. Ballard,
Okay. Sorry, it's a little hard to hear you.
sorry. Keon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
and Marks.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, do we have any future implementation board initiated agenda items? All right, any Any public comment?
I have no public comment.
Thank you. So I would like to adjourn the implementation board.
Thank you.
Thank you.